Y'all hear me on Zoom? Thumbs up or something? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Jeffrey Tillman, call sign AE5JT for those I haven't met. So a little background. I was licensed, I think, in 21. Started learning Morse code in January of 23. That was my 2023 New Year's resolution, was to become proficient in Morse code. And so before I forgot all the tools I used, I wanted to present to the club so that y'all would hopefully benefit from some of the work I put in, and all the different programs and stuff that we used. So all right. So one other thing before I get started, I brought some keys. Sam brought some keys. They're up there on that third table if anyone wants to play with them or hear about the differences in the various kinds we brought. I think we've got pretty much everything covered. We've got paddles, a bug, a straight key, and a cootie key up there. So we've got one of about everything people use. So basically, for those that are interested in learning Morse code, the minimum requirements really are a key or paddle of some sort, something that can make a tone. So that would either be a practice oscillator, which we've got a few up there on the table, or a radio with a side tone. Dave brought his 817 up there. I think it's probably hooked into a dummy load or something, so that it can just make something that makes noise. A desire to learn, which is very much required because it's a lot of work learning it, but it's very rewarding. I would say a mostly positive attitude. For those of y'all that know me, I can get a little frustrated, but I was still able to figure it out. One of the things we'll talk about in a bit is like when you're learning, you have good days and bad days. I mean, I remember there were some days that I was going into class that I don't think I could have copied a Dr. Seuss book read to me in English. It was just like, you're just mind's on work, or you didn't sleep well, or just bad day in general. So if anyone starts trying to learn and has a bad day, we've all been there, and just hang it up for the day and try again. Lastly, lots of practice. We'll kind of cover that here in a minute. The practice required to become proficient, especially if you're looking to do it in a relatively quick period of time. So some of the theories of learning code these are a little out of order, but there's two main ones that are being used nowadays. Back in the day, people would use the tapes, and they would learn code a lot of the times. And correct me for those who did learn it this way. They would start real slow and then just increase speed. And so you'd start listening to code at 5 words a minute, or 10 words a minute, or 15. And you'd slowly try to inch it up. They're getting away from that because what happens when you try to learn that way is that a lot of people will count the dits and daws, and then they peak at when they no longer can count them in their head. So like if you just I feel like everyone knows SOS. So if you hear dit dit dit, da da da, dit dit dit, you can count that in your head, and you're thinking, okay, 3 dits is an S, 3 daws is an O, 3 dits is an S. So the Farnsworth method and the Koch method are really kind of, I use both, but the purpose of them is sending the characters fast. So fast that you can't really count the dits and the daws. So that way you recognize each letter as a sound instead of a string of dits and daws. So it's like if you just hear da da da, I know that's a K. I don't have to count the dits and the daws. And you just learn every letter and number and then some punctuation just as its individual sound. And when you hear it, you want to get to the next part, which is instant character recognition. So you want to get to the point when you really start making strides in code, where when you hear a letter, you're not thinking, was that a K? I think that was a K. Because when you're actually on the air, what happens then is you're lingering on the first letter, and you're going to miss the next 5. And so you want to immediately know, okay, that's K5COW. You're not, if you're lingering on the K, you'll miss the 5COW. So basically the Koch method does that, and what that does is it slowly introduces characters. So you'll learn, like, maybe the first 2 letters will be an A and an N, and then they'll throw in a G, and you work on those for a while, and then they keep adding letters one at a time until you're familiar with the whole alphabet, and then they'll start adding numbers and punctuation. So Farnsworth is another way of using fast code to learn, but slowing it down through spacing. So they're sending you all the letters at 20 to 25 words a minute, where it's too fast for you to count. It's about the speed that you're going to encounter when you actually get on the air. But what they do is they put a gap in between each letter. So you'll hear like da-da-da, space, did-did-did-did, that would be a 5. And so they're leaving spaces so that recognizing that you don't have instant character recognition yet, it's giving you that time to think, okay, that's a K, that's a 5, that's a C. And then as you progress and you get closer to instant character recognition, you tighten up those spaces until you're running at a true 25 words a minute. So most of the things that I'm going to cover today use Farnsworth, Coke, or a combination of the two. So I'm not going to talk much about sending today. I'll hit it a few times, but there's some arguments amongst the various groups that teach code now if you should learn on a straight key or if you should learn on paddles and then go back to the straight key. I don't think either way is really wrong, but what I will tell you is if you're going to learn on paddles or a bug, make sure you do it, know how to properly send. So just for people who aren't familiar, keys or paddles use a keyer to create the dits and the daws. So it'll be a perfect dit and a perfect daw every single time you hit whichever paddle it is. And so you're not having to worry about forming the character. You're just having to worry about stringing the characters together. A straight key and kind of a bug, you have to form them yourselves. And that can lead to some really, really poor sending unless you stay on top of it. There's some guys out there on the air that are like absolutely uncopyable just because they're sending really, really bad code on a straight key. And so depending on which way you choose to learn, that's something you kind of have to think about. The arguments for starting with a straight key is they say that it helps you understand the individual characters and the spacing of them. And I learned on paddles. Sam, did you learn on paddles? And so we learned through the same group. So they say paddles. But I don't think either way is wrong. But if you do start on a straight key or bug, you just have to pay extra attention to making sure you're forming copyable code. So to that, one of the important things to do if you're practicing sending, especially once you get to the point where you're decent at copying, is to record yourself when you're sending to make sure your spacing's right. If you're using a straight key or bug, your characters are proper. Because if I used to do it, I would just set my phone down next to my keyer, practice sending something, and listen to it afterwards. And you'll catch yourself making a lot of mistakes. And the rule of thumb that my advisors told me was if you can't copy yourself, even when you know what you sent, no one else is going to be able to copy you either. So, which seemed fair. There are a lot of, the way I practice sending, I would just send the alphabet in a row with followed by all the numbers. Then I'd send it backwards, and then I'd send a pentagram. Like the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy, I forget what it is. The lazy dog, yeah. And I would send that over and over and over again. And then I'd send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, period, comma, slash, exclamation point, question mark. And I would just do that over and over and over again. And then when I got to the point where I was pretty good at that, I would start having like fake conversations with myself using code. And so I'd be like calling CQ. And I would just look at my QRZ page and like see who the last 10 stations were. And I would pretend like I was calling CQ and these stations were responding to me. And I'd be doing exchanges with these fake QSOs just to practice the flow of stuff. So that's kind of how I practiced sending as I progressed. Most everything from here on out is about copying. So first I want to start out talking about a few of the different organizations that have classes to learn code. The one that I learned on and Sam learned on is CW Ops, CW Academy. And this is I don't know, is it a nonprofit? I think it is.
Well, it's technically it is free.
So yeah, it's a free group that they do a lot of things. One of their the ways of giving back is the CW Academy, and they have 4 classes, which I'll explain on the next screen. The classes are 2 months long. You meet twice a week over Zoom. You're assigned at least one advisor, if not 2 or more advisors that attend those classes. They'll answer your questions, oversee your homework. They might tweak things for you. And they are members of the CW Ops club. And a lot of them have gone through this academy. So they kind of run the classes and everything. And you'll have a small group of people. I think my first one was maybe 6 people, and I think 2 dropped out. And then my second class I took was 5 people, and 1 guy dropped out. We met at I think it was 9 o'clock here, 7 o'clock Western. Most of the guys were on the West Coast in my class, and he was East Coast, and he said 6 o'clock was too late for him. He had to go to bed. So they put him in a different class, I think, with the Europeans. And they do these all over the world. It started off mostly U.S., but now there are classes in Asia, there are classes in Europe, and I think in South America. So you can find one that fits your schedule. Like, I just knew that if I had a class at 7, I was going to be stressing getting home from work, all that. So I did the 9 o'clock class, because if I wasn't home by 9 o'clock, I was having bigger issues. So the good thing is, for those that don't want to join this class, is they have a very, very good curriculum. And you don't really have to be a member of the class to follow the curriculum. Actually, what I did before my first class is I just started on the curriculum, and I made it almost all the way through it before the class even started. And you just look, you pull up, and one thing I forgot to mention, I have links to all of this stuff at the end of this presentation. So if anyone wants this afterwards, I can post it on Groups.io or message it to someone if you want any of these links. So the curriculum is based on, it's 6 days a week. You get 1 day off. And it's about 30 minutes to an hour a day, depending on what that day is. And they recommend, instead of just sitting down for an hour, you kind of break it up. So it'll be broken up into like 4 or 5 sections. And it's like, okay, practice copying, practice sending, practice copying. And I probably shouldn't admit this with a partner of my firm sitting here, but I had a Morse in my desk. And I would be like, okay, I've got 10 minutes until this call. I'm going to get it out and practice sending. And it's like, I would try to knock that out of and work. And then the Morse broke. So if you know how to fix those, let me know. But once you pass one class, you either qualify or get held back. The advisor will say, okay, I think you're and it's mostly based on your input. It'll say, okay, you're ready to move on to the next one. Or I had one that the guy was like, I just really don't feel like I'm getting all this. I want to hang back and take this class again. And you can do that, and it's kind of at your own pace. So one other thing, you can skip classes. Not trying to toot my own horn, but I skipped the first one. I learned all the characters on my own. So I started on the secondary class. Here, I'll get to switch to those. So I skipped beginner's class. I started on fundamental. I then skipped intermediate and went to advanced. So the beginner class is basically just show up off the street. They give you a list of things that you need, like an oscillator and paddles. And then you just sign up on Zoom, and they start you off from the get-go, teach you the characters and all that. Did you used to teach that?
At the time when I taught what was the predecessor to the fundamental course, then called basic.
Okay, because I didn't take that. So I'm assuming they teach you all the characters and then
they assume you, at the second class, you know all the characters.
Okay, gotcha.
It's all about ICR.
Okay, so the goal of that is to learn code at 6 words, up to 6 words a minute, and that's using Farnsworth spacing. So you're going to be getting all your characters at 20 to 25 words a minute, just way spaced out. Then I started at fundamental class, so that's assuming you know your characters and are operating at about 6 words a minute. And that doesn't mean like on the air. That's just copying on these various websites that we're going to get to in a minute. And the goal of that one is to increase to 10 words a minute, and then you get to intermediate, which is operating at 10 words a minute, and the goal is to work up to 20 words a minute. And then advanced is operating at 20, and then increase copying to 30 plus. And that's generally around the time that you get to the advanced class. that you can start becoming considered for membership in the CW Ops group, which I'll cover in a bit. But another option is Long Island CW Club. This is a really, really good organization. I already had learned code by the time I joined them, but I'm a member here as well. It is paid, but it's relatively cheap. I just joined the lifetime, and it's like, okay, pay once, buy once, cry once, or whatever. And the cool thing about Long Island CW Club is they do everything from teaching code to just various random meetings on topics. So like similar to like how we have this random presentation today, you'll look at the Zoom links for Long Island CW Club, and they'll have, the boat anchor forum, or how to get started in POTA, or straight key century club, or antenna basics for dummies, or whatever it is. They've got a lot of things teaching code, but then just random other kind of more CW operating topics. Some of them aren't even limited to CW. So I would say they probably have 10 to 20 classes a day. They're all based on East Coast time, but starting probably, so I think there's even a few for European people. They start about 7 o'clock in the morning, and they'll run till 10 o'clock at night. They've got 4 Zoom rooms. And so sometimes all 4 Zoom rooms are full. Sometimes it'll just be 1 or 2 classes. Weekends tend to be a little slower, but they still have classes on the weekends too. So I am not as familiar with this one because I didn't learn through them. But I do know they have a program called the Beginner's Carousel, which is where they teach you the characters. And my understanding of it is like it's Beginner's Carousel 1 through 10 or 1 through 15 or something. So like, let's just say a random Saturday, you're like, I'm going to sit in on Beginner's Carousel 1. Then the next time you go to class, you jump in 2, and then 3, and then you work your way through that. And then they have intermediate classes and then advanced classes. And they have, I've actually worked her on the air. I don't remember her call sign, but a lady named Jenna who she strives for what's called QRQ, which is as fast as possible code. And she's actually a blind operator. She's 16 or 17 years old and is teaching this QRQ class. So they've got all kinds of cool stuff on there. The cool thing about it is, unlike CW Ops, it's just log on whenever you have time. Okay, it's 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. There's a class I'm interested in. I'm going to jump into it. It doesn't have the set schedule. One thing I've heard from people that have been in this group is that it's a little easier. It takes a little longer. You have to be really, really motivated to make sure that you're, joining a couple of weeks to be making progress. But if you're not in a hurry like I was, then that would work for you. And they do the schedule is updated. They release it to the members. It's either Saturday night or Sunday morning on their group's IO page, and you can see the whole schedule for the next week. Any questions so far? All right, so there's a million different apps.
Got one. I got a question.
Okay, yeah, I can't see who this is. Who's
I don't have a camera. I don't have a camera. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Okay, I'll tell you my background. I was a CW operator in the Navy.
Okay.
But that was 60 years ago. Okay. I can copy probably around 10 words a minute now. I want to get faster. I never really did get efficient with a key. I've looked at Farnsworth and Coke, and I'm really trying to get back with Coke. My main problem is with the Farnsworth is I can't handle the key even at slow speed, let alone going with Farnsworth. Okay. I'm really terrible on that key, so I can't really get started trying to practice something like Farnsworth because I just can't handle a key like that.
What kind of key are you using?
I've got a paddle and I've got a straight key.
Are you better at one than the other?
No. Actually,
I would just
learn the paddle. I'm trying to learn the paddle, and I've got what I'm using for the oscillator. I'm using a 7300, and I can set that thing down where it's not transmitting anything. 7300, and I can slow it down. and I've got it now slowed down, probably where the paddle is running about 15 words a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
I would just practice sending the alphabet in pentagrams over and over and over and over and over again
Well,
until you're sick of it.
I've got the Coke, the Coke study of the Coke practice,
Uh-huh.
pages, the paddle practice pages, and I'm doing terrible. Okay, that's what I'm saying. But anyway,
I think it'll come.
I've given up. I've given up really working with it for about the past month. Working on new antenna, and I've got a problem with new antenna. So,
yeah, I would just keep practicing. If unless it's too frustrating for you, just keep practicing over and over and over again, and it'll come eventually.
I'll just keep working on that paddle.
Okay. Yep,
Okay.
I would do that. I mean, have you tried switching hands?
Well, I'm not left-handed at all.
See,
Okay.
I'm not either, but I send left-handed.
But
So
one,
I'm predominantly right-handed, but I learned to send left-handed so that I could log with my right hand because I
one,
knew I'd have no hope of logging with my left hand.
one thing I have thought about doing, okay, is switching the keys where it's more where it's like a bug, where you use it different. You know, just turn it backwards, okay, for which key is the ditch and which key is the DOS.
Oh yeah, you can do that. You can switch around the contacts.
I thought about doing that. So
Yeah, I think you can do that on your radio too.
So, but anyway, but that's I say that's what to me has ruled out farms for us because I can't even go slow on the thing.
I would just keep practicing. Maybe try switching hands, switch dits and DAWs, all that.
Okay. Well, thank you for. Okay.
All right, so there are a million different apps to learn characters on your phone. I have an iPhone, so these are a couple that are on iOS platform that I used. One's called Morse Mania, and the other's called Morse Toad. And these use the Coke method, where they send you that you start off with I think it's 3 characters, and then they'll add a fourth, and it's sending you code, and you're just typing on your keypad on your phone. Okay, that's an A, that's an N, that's a T, that's a, whatever, that's an E. And when you get it wrong, it starts it over. And so you have to advance to the next letter or whatever. It slowly adds letters and then numbers. Morse Toad works pretty much the same way. I feel like I got bored with Morse Mania and just switched to a different app at some point just to mix it up. That's how I learned all the different letters and the characters. Another way is this, and I didn't use this a whole lot, so because I learned using the apps. But there's a program called Morse Code Trainer that I've linked to the website at the bottom of the PowerPoint. This is used by both CW Ops and Long Island CW Club, and it's a really powerful tool that contains everything from a CW generator. They've got lessons for each character, practice sets. They practice sending abbreviations, full words. Works on increasing your instant character recognition. You can mess with a lot of stuff on there too, like character speed, Farnsworth spacing, all of that. The one I use more often, and I know Phil mentioned that he uses this as well, is LCWO, which is Learn CW Online. This is just a website, and it's got lessons on all the characters. I think it's 40 lessons for the various words, numbers, and some punctuation. You can sit down and just do call sign practice. It'll just send you you can pick US call signs, or I think you can even do only 1x2s or only 2x2s or 2x3s or whatever, and it'll send you various call signs that you practice, and then you get a grade at the end of each thing saying what your percentage of accuracy. You can mess with all the speeds, so you can mess with the Farnsworth spacing. You can mess with, even which letters you get. So for instance, and how often you get them. So you can just say, okay, send me everything, and you'll get every character. You have to worry with punctuations. You'll get asterisks and stuff, which you're literally never going to hear on the air. But you can customize what letters you get. So I use this all the time, and I would just do them 1 to 2 minute sets. And I would just do one and then take a break from it for a minute, and then do one and just slowly keep increasing speed by shortening the Farnsworth spacing or by adding letters to the code group. So you could get like, A, B, C, D, E, and then it'd be like Z, Y, and you'd get 5-letter groups. Anthony, how are you doing?
Great.
Well, good. Here, you want me to?
You're doing a great presentation.
Okay, well, thank you. There you go. So another thing that I used this a lot for was to work on my problem letters. So for the longest time, I had 6 problem letters. They were U and V. A U is did-a-daw, a V is did-a-da-da, an S and an H, which is did-a-dit or did-a-dit. Or I think that was a 5. Did. Yeah. So those were 4 of my worst, and then I really had a hard time with L's and F's. I would get those mixed up. An L is did-a, did it, and an F is did-a-da it. And so what I would do is I'd get all the letters, but I would increase how often I would see S, H, V, U, and LF to like 50% of the time. So I'm getting them just constantly until I got better at it. I did, as I was making this presentation, I was playing with all these various apps, and I was like pulling just reacquainting myself with them. So I ran an LCWO, I think it was a 2-minute set at 25 words a minute. The only ones I missed were U and V's and S's and H's. So that shows you that I need to spend more time on this because I'm starting to slide on my problem characters. I'm getting back into them. So I don't know if Brian is on the Zoom thing, but he has a nightmare call sign for me because it's KI5FLE. I would have messed that up a million times when I was learning.
Well, I'll make this comment. When I was learning last year, might have been a year, no, it was last year. I had some issues that I was getting the letters backward, characters backwards, thinking that this letter was these characters, and this letter was, and I had them.
You had them backwards. That'll happen.
I think it's called dyslexia.
Thank you.
So another really, really cool tool is a thing called Morse Code Ninja. This is created by, I can't remember his name. His call sign's AD0WE. What? Yeah, that is him. So I actually set a ham alert for him just because I was curious. I'm like, I'm going to catch this guy when he's on the air sometime. I don't think he ever gets on the air, or if he does, he never calls CQ. But he created this website, and it is absolutely overwhelming when you go to his website. You could spend an entire week without sleeping just reading all the CW stuff he has on there. And that's not even getting into all of his videos. That's just pure words on his website. I mean, he's got things on how to, print things on 3D printers and just absolutely everything. But the main thing that I use is his videos or podcasts. So he uses, it's some sort of AI he uses to create these. But the basis is something is sent in code, then in English, then in code. And so that's everything from letters to learning letters to numbers. And he has thousands and thousands and thousands of different combinations. Like you can just pick like, okay, I only want to listen to British call signs or whatever. And he's going to have a 2-hour-long thing on just practicing British call signs. He's got, the top 300 words in the English language, the top 300 QSO phrases. He's got most common U.S. names under 5 letters or whatever. And he has every single one of those from 15 to 50 words a minute. And they're spaced out with Farnsworth spacing. I don't remember exactly what he uses, like 6 times spacing or something. But this thing, it's incredible. Like my wife hates me when she gets in my car and I've been listening to it, and I'll just turn on my truck. It starts like did it on it, and she's like reaching for the thing to turn it off. I've had people from work get in my truck and look at me like I'm insane going to lunch when there's all kinds of beeps going off. But I'll listen to this just when I'm driving around. And you try to copy it the first time, and then you hear what it is in English, and then you get to listen to it again in code after you know what the word is. It's very, very, very helpful. Just if you're slightly interested, just go down the wormhole of his website sometime. So kind of moving up to more advanced things. This is kind of getting into the code. You're starting to practice. You're starting to practice learning call signs and how to do QSOs and all that. There's a program called Morse Runner, and I just flat out think this is fun. I'll just whenever if it's thunderstorming outside, I'm like, man, I wish I could go get on my radio, but I don't want to get electrocuted. I'll go jump on Morse Runner, and it's a simulated contest. And so you're sitting there pressing enter on your computer, and it's calling CQ, and then you can turn on QSB, QRN. You can turn on lids, like people calling over you, people spilling over into your frequency, and stations will start responding to your call. And you can mess with which kind of stations you're hearing. You can say okay, just US call signs, or I want the whole world. And you're just getting bombarded by call signs, and you're trying to, the one I do is you exchange a signal report, or a call sign, a signal report, and then a QSO serial number. So you'll hear NM5N is calling me. I'll type in NM5N and hit enter, and it'll say 599, and then it'll give him 005 is my QSO number. And then he'll send back his call sign and say 599, and then he's number 12. He'll do T12 or whatever. And it's just, you can set the timing on it for 5 minutes to, I don't know how long it'll go, but you just sit there and pretend you're in a contest. And it's a really, really good way to practice.
Is it a program or?
It's a program. And
download it on a website?
Yep, and I've got it linked at the end of this PowerPoint.
Oh, there.
It's just a copy code?
It's just a copy. You're doing computer sending. And so, and it's really interesting too, because people will flutter. They'll start real strong and they'll get quiet. Or one station comes in really loud on top of another one, or 3 stations are calling you at the same time. You have to wait for one of them to pop out. It's a lot of fun to play with. And it's a good way to practice. The next one, this was the bane of my existence in learning code. Everyone in my class hated it. But our advisor made us play with this. I think it was 2 or 3 rounds a day. He's like, all right, you got to sit down and do 2 or 3 rounds of this every single day. And it's Roof ZXP, which is Roofs is German for call sign. I forget the full name, but it was written by a German guy. And it's designed just to practice copying call signs. And it is so frustrating. It's a lot of foreign call signs, which is good because you want to be able to copy. If you're out calling CQ and some guy from Zimbabwe calls you, you're going to be kicking yourself that you can't copy his call sign because it doesn't start with a K. So it sends random call signs. If you miss one, you lose points and it gets slower. If you get it right, it goes faster. And so you get to the point where it's just screaming fast. And you're trying to get a good score because some of the CW ops advisors make you turn in your scores. You're trying to get a good score, and then you get some long call sign with a slash in it that's going 30 miles an hour. You get a VE6/AE5JT/MM, and you're like, oh my god! And you can repeat it once, and once you've repeated it once, if you can't get it, you just have to hit enter and you take the loss on it. So not only does it keep track of the accuracy of the call signs you're copying, it also keeps track of how fast you're copying them. So if you sit there and think about it for a few seconds, then you get fewer points than if you would have copied it quickly. So that gets to one thing I was going to mention earlier and I forgot to, but one of the things that you're striving towards as you're learning is not only copying quickly and instant character recognition, you can get to the point where you're copying behind. So if someone is, if I'm out doing a POTA activation and someone comes screaming in, Sam's being a jerk and he's sending to me 40 words a minute. I can't type 40 words a minute. And so I have to keep it in my head that I heard NM5N and type it after he's done singing. And so that's one of the things that you're working on trying to achieve. Another thing you're working on trying to achieve is you're wanting to get to the point where you aren't copying everything letter by letter. So you can do that, but it kind of slows you down because you tend to hear the same things over and over and over again on the air. So you want to get to the point where you're hearing full words as a sound. So instead of copying, like you hear all the time, trying to think, like thanks, TNX, or TU. I'm not copying TU. I just know that that's thank you or thanks. Or like people will say FER for, like thank you for contact. And I don't even have to think that it's an F, an E, or an R. I just hear for, and I just know, okay, he's saying thank you for. So that's one of the other things you're striving to get to. Okay, this is another pretty cool thing for those that may not have access to a radio or an oscillator, or just are interested in technology. This Ham Radio Solutions V-Band is an online chat room that you use paddles to talk in. And so you get on, and it's like being on the radio, sort of. And there's two different kinds of chat rooms. There's one that's just, you don't have to be a ham to do this, but it's all in code. You buy this little dongle thing for your computer that you plug your keys into, get into these chat rooms, and they've got one that decodes and one that doesn't. So you can just jump in and talk to people all over the world, over the internet, where you're getting CW out of your computer and you're sending with paddles. So the only thing I will say about it is if you practice on it, you get used to it. But if you're jumping back and forth between a radio and V-band, it's a tad laggy. Like I'm very used to in the radio, like if I'm sending something, I'm just listening to it come out. Like I'm holding down the DIT key and I'm like, okay, that was three DITs. And so I let go. Where if you do it that way on V-band, you tend to send too many DITs or DOS just because it takes a split second to get to register or whatever. But if you, there for a while, I was playing on it quite a bit, and I got to the point where I wasn't making as many mistakes. I jumped on it again the other day, and I was awful. So, so that's something kind of cool to play with. We actually had one of our advisors in CW Ops. I think it was my fundamentals class. We were all talking about it. Everyone bought the dongles, and then we had a Zoom class. But we were also doing a class in this V-band where we were all talking to each other using code. So one thing I wanted to mention, and I've kind of already covered this, is when you're learning code, it's not only are you learning to communicate in a different way by sending DITs and DAWs as opposed to normal letters, but you're also learning to converse in a different language. So for those coming from sideband and digital, you're familiar with maybe some of the Q codes, a few abbreviations that hams will use, but CW uses so many abbreviations. And I remember there was a guy in one of my classes that he was just mad about it. He's like, just send what you mean. What are we using all these abbreviations for? And you'll probably encounter, would you say 50? Probably 50 or so. Yeah, so 50 or so abbreviations you hear if you're doing, rag chew type talks that you just kind of have to know, because and I've got some examples down here. So like the first one would be me calling CQ POTA. So CQ is obviously calling all stations. POTA, parks on the air. Day means from. AE5JT, AE5JT, and then K means any and all stations, please call me. So anyone that can hear me, please come back. So like another one would be CQFD, which is field day K5COW. The next one would be me participating in a contest, which is CQ test, which this confused the hell out of me for the longest time. I was trying to make sure my radio was transmitting, and I was sending test, and someone came back at me screaming fast, like 40 words a minute, thinking I was in a contest. I was doing test day AE5JT, and someone really thought I was in a contest. Was probably upset that I couldn't copy more than about 10 words a minute. So like here is another, the next one down is
Send Bs if you're testing.
Yeah, that's what I learned after I started sending tests. I think I asked my CW advisor, I'm like, some jerk came back at me and he's like, what were you sending? And I was like, I was sending tests. He's like, hey, dumbass, he thought you were in a contest. So now I know to send Vs.
V.
Yeah. So people will send these to either test a radio or they'll also use it to hold a frequency. Like if there's a contest that's about to start, a lot of the times what you'll hear is you'll hear someone calling CQ like 4 or 5 times in a row, and they're trying to hit the RBN so that they pop up on the spotting pages. And then they'll hold the frequency by sending Bs until the contest starts, and then they'll start calling CQ for real. So everyone has their favorite frequency that they, are trying to hold. And it's always all the guys that, I think Doug is on. He told me that I think he was doing this once, and some guy came and blasted him off a frequency and all of that. So other abbreviations, they just keep getting weirder and weirder, but so BK means like back to you. That's kind of a newer abbreviation. Some of the guys that have been doing CW a long time think that's.
It could also mean,
that's BT.
yeah, okay, that is enough.
Yeah, so.
What am I gonna say? That is enough.
Yeah, that's BT. BK is back. So, like this would be back to you. Good evening, and thank you. You are 599-599 Main. Good luck back. So that's a lot of the times what I would hear if I'm out calling CQ POTA. I'm going to hear BK. Good evening. They might say and thank you. It kind of. I've got a POTA exchange here in a minute, but like 599 ME Main. Good luck. It's GL. The last one would be like a longer rag chew between me and Sam.
What the heck is Maine?
They're telling you where they're located.
Okay.
The state. ME Maine. Yeah.
All right.
Yes. ES is and. So good luck or good evening and thank you. It's French for.
I can't speak English.
So the last one would be me and Sam in a longer rag chew, and this is me calling Sam back. And so this is Sam, this is Jeffrey. BT means I'm thanking or I want an intentional break before I start transmitting again. Thanks for the fine business. FB is kind of an old school term that people still use, like thanks for the good contact. And hope to see you again. OM is old man, which means a male radio, a CW operator. Women are XYL or YL.
No, YL.
XYL just means the wife.
The wife. Like I was actually in a longer QSO the other day, and my wife was yelling at me. She was mad because dinner was ready, and I was still talking to some guy on the radio. And so I hit him back with, "Hey, sorry to cut off quick. Got to go. XYL is about to kill me. Dinner's ready." And he laughed. He said, "Hi," which is ha ha. Enjoy dinner. Go be with your wife. 73.
There are no XYLs.
It's extra young lady.
It's less chauvinistic and more politically correct to say YL.
Yep. So SK means end of transmission, silent key. And then I would end by saying who I'm talking to and who I am. And then KN means back to you. So like earlier I said K is anyone please copy me. KN means the station that I'm calling only. Call me back. So once you have reached a level where you can send and receive remotely accurately and copy your call sign in a basic exchange, it's time to get on the air. All of these programs are great. They teach you a lot. They're fun to play with, but there's no substitute for just getting on the air and figuring it out. You're going to make some mistakes. I've probably made some horrible mistakes. There are probably people that hate me out there for some of the things I did on the air, but you got to do it to figure it out. The next couple slides are going to be some places that you can go on the air to that are more understanding of beginners and that more understanding to get to more complicated. But first, make sure you know all portions of your call sign and only respond when the CQing station comes back to you, and also know a question mark. So let's pick on Dave here. So let's say he's responding to a station. There's a station calling CQ. If he hears the below, should he respond back and try to make a contact with the station? So if he hears K5YFO, they're clearly talking to him. They've heard him. They're not asking him to repeat. They've got his whole call sign. They're talking to him. He goes back to them. What about if he hears just K5? K5 question mark. Would you respond to that, Dave?
If I was calling CQ,
Or if someone was calling CQ, you were trying to contact them.
I would go back to it with a full call.
Exactly. That's what you should do. You should send your whole call sign again. They could be talking to another K5. There's a lot of K5s out there. So if he hears K5 question mark, and then he sends his full call again, if the other side comes back with K5 ABC, he stops transmitting. Yeah. And then when they call CQ again, he sends his full call sign. If he hears W5, he does not respond back because they're calling another station. This is where knowing your full call sign comes in. What if he hears YFO question mark? That's the end of his call sign. Someone was probably, different people will do it different ways. I tend to call on the first person who calls me. So if I hear a KI, I ignore everything else, and then I send KI question mark. Other people tend to listen to the end of the pileup if they have a pileup. So they may wait for the last station to call, and they just hear a YFO at the end, and they call back to that. If he hears K3, he does not respond because they're calling someone in, what is 3? Is that like Ohio? Pennsylvania. Yeah. So this is where it gets tricky. This is where you have to know your pro signs and your abbreviations. So if he hears K5 YFO AS AF5YT question mark, what that person is telling him is K5 YFO stand by, AF5YT come back. And then that's either because Dave is being irritating or the guy is working two people. He hears two call signs and he's telling you, Dave, wait, I'll call you next. I want to talk to Bud first. You don't hear that a whole lot. And if you don't know what's going on when you hear someone send something like that, the best practice is just don't send your call sign again. Yeah, what's up?
Sometimes if you're operating on a net, you'll only send like the last character, I would say, da, da, da.
Mm-hmm.
And then control station come back and say, so da, 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 E, whatever, and I would come back in.
Mm-hmm.
Full call.
Yep, that is very true.
It's all about abbreviating to maximize the amount of time that you're trying to not use.
So Dave, what about the last one? If you heard K5 YFO, NIL, lid, do you respond then?
Yes.
Yeah, you turn up your power and blast them.
I would respond with any dumb.
What NIL
What
means?
is nil and lid? I mean, lid, that's.
Yeah, that's just,
right?
yes, that's just you're being a jerk. NIL means not in log, not in log. So if someone is being, I've only heard this and it wasn't directed towards me, but some guy, he couldn't copy anything. And he was just blasting his call sign, probably using 500 plus watts and just blowing up the pile. And the guy tried working him. He was calling his call sign, question mark. He just couldn't copy. And he couldn't even recognize his own call sign, or maybe he didn't have his headphones plugged in or whatever. And I heard the guy go back like, hey, not in log, not in log, not in log, and called him a lid, which I thought was hilarious.
What is a lid?
A lid is just an idiot. It's a poor operator.
Poor operator.
Yeah.
Historically, that comes from various ways, but one story it goes back to the telegrapher days.
Mm-hmm.
They're using sounders.
Oh, okay.
So, you know what a Prince Albert can is?
Yeah.
Like a tobacco can.
Mm-hmm.
Poor operators would put a tobacco can on the sounder because they couldn't hear it. They thought it was loud. And it was just like, good idiot.
Yeah. So if you ever are on the air and someone calls you a lid, just spin the dial. Unless you want to get into an argument in Morse code.
There's always a switch on your radio.
There is. Just turn the dial.
They'll put a break
on the key?
Yeah, you can do that too. If you're using a straight key, just. Yep, there you go. That's generally when people start tuning their amps. All right, so we're going to talk about me and Sam's favorite thing, Parks on the Air. This is a great place to start as a CW operator. The speeds are reasonable. You can generally get an idea of what speed someone is running by looking at the spotting page. The RBN will respot them and say, okay, this one's 15 words a minute. This one's 28.
RBN.
RBN is the reverse beacon network. So there are all these, are they SDRs, I guess? There are all these software-defined radios all across the world that are listening to the Morse code bands, and they will report and show where people are calling CQ. So like I rely on it a lot when I'm going out to Parks on the Air. I'll set up an activation on the Parks on the Air website, and that's telling the RBN, hey, I'm going to be out here, I'm going to be calling CQ at this time and at this location. I get out to the park, and all I have to do is call CQ 3 or 4 times, sometimes even just once. The RBN picks me up and spots me on the POTA page. And it says what park I'm at, what frequency I'm on, how fast I'm running, how many decibels I am at wherever the SDR was that picked me up. And it'll keep spotting you on the page. So you can look at the spots and see how fast someone's running. And so you can decide without even turning your radio on if you want to try to talk to that person. So most people are running between 15 to 25 words a minute. It's really, really rare to see someone on there that's running faster than that. Every now and then you'll see someone pushing like 28 or 30. They get lots fewer callers. I've noticed as I like going a little faster, but I've noticed as I turn it down a little bit, you get more callers. It kind of gets some of the people that are nervous at higher speeds to call on you. Or if you have too many people that don't know what they're doing calling you, you just turn the speed up a little bit and it stops. So if you start as a hunter, you respond to stations calling CQ. All you really need to know is your call sign. See the slide before to know what you need to know about your call sign and how to send a signal report in the state you're in. The basic exchange is down below. I'll cover that here in a second. But once you're ready, you can go out and start activating, whereas you're the station that's calling CQ and responding to the stations that are calling you. The good thing about being a hunter is you don't even need to know how to copy the other station's call sign, except you want to make sure you're talking to the right person. But if you get on the spotting page, you just see that AE5JT is on calling CQ on 20 meters at 1.045. So it's like, okay, I know AE5JT is on this frequency. I can hear that person calling CQ, so I'm going to respond to them. So once you're ready and you feel like you can run a pileup, you can go out and start activating. I would recommend, if you've never done it before, don't go out there with a full power radio or turn it down. The more wattage you run, the more stations you have calling you back, and it can get overwhelming really fast. So I do this, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've done it quite a bit, not as much as Sam. But I was in Big Bend right after Christmas, and there was a guy in El Paso that really, really, really wanted to work Big Bend on 40 meters. And so I set up a time with him. I was emailing him as I was hiking St. Helena Canyon saying, hey, I should be set up in like 30 minutes. I had my 891. I turned it up to 100 watts to do 40-meter sideband, made a contact with him and a few other people out in West Texas. And then I'm like, all right, I'm switching to code. I forgot to turn my power down. I'm calling CQ, and I'm just getting blasted. And I didn't have my headphones in. And I was just listening to it through the speaker. And my wife is like, Mike, she's sitting there reading a book while I'm playing with my radio. And she's like, what is going on? And I was like, oh, I forgot to turn power down, and turned it down, and it calmed down a little bit. But I still, when I go out to a park, I generally don't run more than, even if I'm running my 891, more than 30 or 40 watts, unless I forget. But I will say it's kind of intimidating going out and calling CQ for the first time, because you're like, all right, am I going to be able to like actually copy these call signs? I've been practicing all these different things, but under real world conditions, am I going to botch a bunch of call signs and disappoint all these people. And even if you bust a call sign, most people are understanding about it, or will email you and just say, hey, I think I worked to you, and you see that you worked, you're one letter off or something. And POTA's not a contest, so you can go back and change call signs if you need to. I will say Sam talked me off a ledge on my first activation. I was out there hunting from the park. I activated the park by hunting. And then Sam was at his ranch, which is like 10 miles from Mineral Wells. And so I knew he was out there, so we got on 2-meter phone. He's like, you need to call CQ. You need to call CQ. I've got my radio set up. I'll call you. And you were either my first or second POTA activator station that called me. And I remember I botched your call sign. I even knew you were going to call me. I sent it back wrong. So it can be a little intimidating, but it's a lot of fun. Another good place to start when you're learning is called the SST. This is the slow speed contest. I forget who puts this on. Some of them are CW Ops or splinter groups of CW Ops. And this is a contest that happens every week, 2 hours a week, and everyone is sending 20 words a minute or less. Most people hand send this. So they're using keys or straight key or paddles or straight keys or something. The exchange is pretty simple, and I've got a list of the contest rules at the end if anyone's interested. You send your first name, your state, province, or DX entity, and that's all you have to send. This one is a little bit different than the ones I'm going to get into next. Friendly conversations are kind of encouraged in this one because it's not the big time contester. Actually, a lot of the big time contesters play in this one, but they just know that this is a more laid back contest, and they're not trying to just scream through as many contacts as possible. So the exchange is just CQSST. This is one of my advisors I put in here, AA2IL. So the exchange is a CQSST, your call sign. Person calls you back. You say their call sign or send back their call sign, your name and state, and then he responds back to me with, good evening, Jeff, Joe, California. And then I send back, thank you, Joe, good luck, AE5JT. And then when I send SST again, that's basically me calling it CQ again, saying I'm done with that contact. The next one is the MST, which is the medium speed test. This one's 20 to 25 words a minute. The times are up there. It's, I think, 3 hours a week. This one's similar exchange, but it's name and QSO serial number. So the first contact you make gets a 1. The second contact is a 2, all the way until you run out at the end of the hour. This can be a little tricky. You have to make sure that you're actually copying the number, because a few people in this one will run what's called SO2R, which is single operator 2 radios. So they have these fancy headphones where they're listening to the radio on the right in their right ear and the radio on the left in their left ear, and they're hunting on one side and calling CQ on the other. So they may be on 15 and 20. He's calling CQ on 20 and responding to the stations that are calling him while he's spinning the dial and hunting stations on the other radio. It's insane.
I missed the frequency.
The frequency range, these are on any non-work bands. It's all of these. So you kind of have to figure it out. It's not really, they publish suggested frequencies. I think all of them are 1.025 to maybe, well, how high does it go? 50, 75, not even 75.
Yeah.
Probably 50.
Maybe Doug knows.
I forget, it's been a little bit. But
it's usually, it's usually 28 kilohertz above the bottom of the band, and it goes up to about 50.
Yeah, so, and that'll be, and you kind of just have to pay attention to the time of day, because a lot of the times, like I'll talk about the CWT next, but you just notice, you'll be on one band and it just dies. And it's like 25 minutes into the contest, everyone has moved from 20 to 40. Or if it's one of the morning contests, everyone moves from, 15 to 10. And it's just like everyone just moves at the same time. It's really weird. You'll be like scrolling up the band and you're like, where did everyone go? And then you switch over to 40 and you're like, oh, there they are. And so people jump around. Some people will call on the same band the whole time, but a lot of people move around. So this is the exchange for the MST. This is a guy, a friend of mine that was in one of my classes. He uses the name Finn when he's on the air. His name's Justin, and he was tired of sending Justin over and over and over again in contests. And he said there was no easy way to shorten Justin. So his dog's named Finn, and so he goes by his dog's name when he's on the air. All right, so the next one, this is not good for beginners. This thing is terrifying. The CWT is the CW contest. This is four times a week. I say 4 times a week. It's really Wednesday night into Thursday morning. It is really, really fast. I remember the first time I got on this, I was like, my God, how does anyone do this? And I figured it out, and I still don't run in it because it's too terrifying for me, but I still search and pounce in it. But most ops in this are running using a computer. So my little thing back here is a win key, or the one with the buttons on the top. That's more than just a practice oscillator. That I hook my key up to that and then hook it into my computer, and using a logging software called N1MM or other softwares, I can send by typing. And most of the people that are sending it at 30 to 40 words a minute are computer sending. They also have call history. Yes.
For those who are non-contesters, explain running versus search.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Running is the station calling CQ. So I'm calling CQ and responding to people calling me. Search and pounce is I'm spinning up the dial, listening for the stations calling CQ and responding to them. So there's a little bit less pressure when you're doing the search and pounce, because I'm not calling CQ and some guy comes screaming at me with 50 words a minute. I already know what the guy's call sign is in his exchange most of the time, because I've listened to a few of his contacts before me. So, Doug, do you run in the CWTs? I think you do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You're a better man than I am. So
I didn't say I was any good at it.
I need to start practicing more and start doing that. Oh, yep. Oh, what'd you say?
Don't be afraid.
Yeah, it's intimidating. So the another thing people are using is call history. So these logging softwares will keep track of people's exchanges from one contest to the next. And so, like, if Sam calls me, I'm calling CQ and he calls me, I type in NM5N and hit enter, and all of his information pops up in the computer. The logging, I don't even have to, theoretically, I don't even have to listen anymore. You still want to make sure it's right. So I may not be actually copying it and typing it, but I'm still making sure, okay, I've got NM5N, he just sent me Sam, and then whatever his number is. So this contest, if you're interested at any point in joining the group CW Ops, is the best way to get membership in this group. In order to gain membership, you have to have worked, I think it's 4. Is it 4 or 5?
I think whoever's sponsoring you,
And the 3
I think
others.
they've got to have you at least 3 times.
Yeah, so you have to work the same 4 stations 3 times at over 25 words a minute. And they will sponsor you for membership in this group, saying that you're a competent CW operator. So that's, if you ever want to join this, the best way to do it is the CW Ops, the CWTs, because 2 reasons. A lot of CW Ops members hang out there, and everything is over 25 words a minute. So if they see that they worked you in the CWTs, they're like, okay, he was going over 25 words a minute. So
just to point out, you don't have to go through CW Academy.
you do not.
You can entirely, however you learn it, doesn't matter.
And you don't have to make the contacts in CWTs. You can do it another way. It's just, it gets a little tricky proving, okay, I talked to Mike 4 years ago on 20 meters, and that I see that we made a CW contact, but it's like, okay, how do I know he was running over 25 words a minute? He could have been Dave back there that I was calling a lid. I don't remember 4 years ago. So one of the things that you have to watch out for, especially in these really fast contests, is cut numbers. And this will come either in people don't really use them. I've never heard it used in a call sign, but people will use these in serial numbers and membership numbers, and also in signal reports. So the cut numbers is, instead of sending A 9 is a really, really long string of letters. It's da, 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 da. And so people that are wanting to go really fast don't want to send that many DAWs. So instead of sending 599, a lot of the times you'll hear 5NN, or the abbreviation for 5 is an E. So you might also hear ENN. It gets trickier. There's a bunch of them. Like if someone has the membership number in CWOps 1009, and they feel like going really fast and being a jerk to people who are learning CW, instead of sending a 1009, they could send ATTN. And that's an abbreviation for 1009. So that's something that before you jump into one of these big contests, you kind of need to figure out cut numbers. The other good thing about all the contests I've talked about today is they're not scored. You just kind of enter everything on the honor system. So if you mess something up, it's no one really cares. Here's the time for the CWTs. One other thing to be aware of is people are not at all chatty in this. If you want to get into a conversation, the CWT is not the time to do it. Everyone's sending with computers using N1MM. You might hear a TU, a thank you, but yeah, you're probably not even going to hear that. The one funny thing is there's one or two guys that participate in this contest that feel like messing with people. And one of them's, what is it? It's W7SW?
Yep.
Yeah, W7SW. He sends a different name every single week. And so the call history, doesn't catch it. So you have to, if you hear W7SW, you're like, all right, I got to listen for this guy. And it's been a while since I worked him. The last time I worked him, he was sending moron is his name. And I remember texting Sam because I knew he was playing, and he's running like big power. You can hear him all over the U.S. And he's like, I think he's in Arizona. And so he sends like 599 moron Arizona. And he'll send all kinds of crazy stuff. So a few people try to keep you on your toes and make light of it. But a few other exchanges, you send, if you're a member of CWOps, you send your number. Non-members send their name and the state, province, or DX entity. And then if you're a CWOps Academy student, in place of your state, you send CWA. Here's a couple sample exchanges. I won't bore you with all of these. I've got one, some of y'all probably know KG5VK, that's Steve, can't remember his last name. Is it Smith? Yeah, he's a member of CWOps. So this would be a, yeah, so he's the section manager, the one that speaks at convention and all that. This would be him calling CQ and me responding. So I say, he calls me back and says, Steve, his membership number. I say, Jeff, my membership number. He says, thank you, and sends his call sign, and people will start calling again. The next one would be between a member and a non-member. So this would be Sam calling CQ and CWT. Dave responds back. Sam sends his membership number. Dave says, Dave, TX. And then Sam says, thank you, NM5N, CWT. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is Straight Key Century Club. This is another good spot for new operators. And Straight Key Century Club, excuse me, is a club that promotes the use of mechanical Morse, which is anything but paddles and a keyer. So you can use a straight key, you can use a bug, you can use a cootie key. It's anything where you're forming the Morse code characters either mechanically or by hand. So like a bug sends the dits automatically, but that's allowed. So it's free to join. I think they have almost 30,000 members worldwide. That you join, you fill out this little membership application. It's basically just your email and call sign, and then they issue you a number that stays with you for life. All of the SKCC exchanges must be made using a straight key bug or cootie key. Most of the contacts are probably between 10 and 20 words a minute, with some being even lower than 10. Some guys running straight keys will be going like, probably 7 or 8 words a minute. And they're very, very understanding of newer operators, except the one that I worked that sent me a rude QSL card, which is weird. Never gotten a rude card before, but he was, I don't know what his deal was, but they have specific calling frequencies that are listed on their website. I think it's like 20 meters is 14050, 40 is 7.055. I forget the other ones, but they're all listed on their website. The trickier thing for operators that are starting is all of the places I've talked about starting are short, very formulaic exchanges. They're just basically name or call sign, state, some random number, something like that. These are much, much longer. Like a contact could be from 5 to 10 minutes on one of these. Some people will want to go into a longer talk, which is called a rag chew. One of the other things that's kind of cool about SKCC is they have awards for absolutely everything. It's like they have a marathon award. You have to have 100 contacts that last more than 60 minutes. They've got worked all states. They've got, if you work 100 people, you get this award. And they've got all kinds of stuff that you can qualify for and get awards. They have their own logging program. That's a good way to keep track of all these various awards and helps you apply for them. The basic at its most core is you have to exchange call sign, signal report, name, which sometimes could be Fort Worth, Texas, or simple as just Texas, and your SKCC number. The logger that they use actually has all that plugged in, so if you're kind of struggling at first, you just get the call sign right, hit enter, and it all pops up. You'll hear, this is where you have to know all the abbreviations. Uh-oh, my computer's about to die. Good thing I'm almost done. You will hear a ton of pleasantries, abbreviations, pro signs, all that kind of stuff. So you kind of have to know those before you get started in this. So I won't bore you with, well, there we go. I won't bore you with reading this whole thing, but this would be like a sample SKCC exchange that has more pleasantries. This is between me and Sam, a fake QSO. So it's basically just explaining, doing the random the exchange, and then a few other pleasantries in there. Like Sam mentions that he's also in Fort Worth, says must be close, hi, which is laughing. This has all the abbreviations that would be used in this type of QSO. So if you ever want to look back at this, you're welcome to, but I won't bore you by reading all of it. And then lastly, these are all the links. When I get home, or maybe tomorrow, I will post this up on the groups IO, or if anyone wants to send me an email, I'm happy to share this, and it should have everything. Yeah, Dave.
A couple of items. One, W1AW, the AWR.
Yes.
Will have nightly CW. They'll start at, I don't know, some nights they start slow and go fast, and other nights it's fast and works slow. It's usually some text from a QST article or something like that.
And that is a great tool. I have the attention span of a goldfish, so I can't listen for more than about 5 seconds without falling asleep. But
the other thing I wanted to say is there are a lot of QRP, low power clubs that build stuff. They have tons of contests, but they're very relaxed. They're like, FYBO, freeze your butt off.
Yeah.
January, they'll go out and have this. The New Jersey guys had one called the Skeeter Hunt.
Yeah. What is the
North?
North America? Is it the NA? I know you remember, Phil. Is NAQCC? That's another one that I'm a member of, and I get their newsletter. I just can't remember the name.
There are a lot of old, more relaxed and more welcoming to new people. Third thing I'd like to say is we're going to have a CW position at Field Day. And so if you're interested, stop by and see Sam or Jeffrey or any of the other Randy or Doug, and just sit down and listen for a few minutes. May even let you have a chance at taking a shot at one of the contacts. Just try it.
It's a lot of fun.
You want to just one question, just like for you, what's your answer to the question? Well, why CW? Why do you really do it?
My main answer is because I'm a giant nerd and just think it's fun. But I think I like the challenge of it. I like that in a way it's, I don't know that dying skill is the right term, but I just, from when I first started radio, I was interested in it. And I was like, I just want to learn this because this is what everyone had to learn before me. and I want to get competent at it. I just think it's fun. It's a mental challenge. It's a way to stay on your toes. And the other good thing about it is you can bust through really, really bad conditions, and you can get really, really far. I've worked. I think before, and for those of y'all that don't know me, I think FT8's great. I'm just not personally into it, and I was trying to get countries all over the world, and my 100 watts in a wire at home just wasn't quite doing it. And I think I'm at 103 or 4 countries since I switched to CW.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked Norfolk Island like 2 days ago, and they're off in between New Zealand and Australia, and it sounded like he was sitting in the same room with me.
There's also another club called FIS.
Yes, they don't do a whole lot anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I joined them, and I mean, I don't think they don't have a newsletter. Their website doesn't look like it's been updated in like 15 years. Yeah, I'm a member of the club, but I don't think they even do.
Doug had a couple comments.
Oh yeah, Doug. Doug, I don't know if you're muted or.
I'll let him catch up, but he said, other practice resources, morsecode.world, and other organizations, CW Innovations.
Yes. Yep. I'm not. I've heard of them, but I'm not terribly familiar with those, Doug. If you want to chime in.
Okay, well, morsecode.world is a lot like any of the other online practice tools. You can set it up to do, instant word recognition, instant character recognition, lots of different things. It's very, very, very flexible. And the other organization is CW Innovations. They're a lot like CW Academy courses. They sound like they're very, very similar, but I think they're a little bit easier to get into. The waiting list for CW Academy courses is pretty long.
Yep, I think it has gotten a little longer. I was fortunate to get in my first try in both of my classes. But got any other questions?
What about you, Sam? What about you?
Yeah, so similar reasons. I really like the fact that, I live in an apartment, and so I can't, if I push 100 watts, I start popping circuit breakers in my neighbors, which is a problem. But I could be very effective even with very low power. You can do small rated. I really like the challenge, like that. So much you can do. I can learn to do something in ham radio over a weekend, but learning CW is not something you can really. Learning Morse code is not something you can really do over a weekend. It takes time. So the challenge was bigger. And
you're never completely done either.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're never totally done. And probably the biggest misnomer when you think about learning Morse code is it's not really a code. So that's a mistake. It's really like learning a language, and that is something. It is really a language. You're using the same parts of your brain as you learn language.
I think it's very close to an instrument too. It's like learning to play a guitar or whatever.
There's a tactile thing.
Funny thing about that too, there's if you're a musician in the Cold War or anything previous, the first place you went was Germany, copy of Morse code or South Korea somewhere.
Yep.
Because it's somehow or another, it's highly efficient. You may fact check this, but I read that Johnny Cash could do 60 words.
Oh, really? I think wasn't Elvis a Morse code intercept officer?
Black, Man in Black.
Oh, okay, that's what he was saying. I thought Elvis was too. Okay, but that's not. Yeah.
Air Force Security Service operator in Alaska.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a fun challenge, and it's a good way to make interesting contacts. And
if you're tone deaf, don't be discouraged. Just practice more.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add, and Jeff, you mentioned just to put stop it. People, when they start operating, they're really afraid that they're going to make a mistake. Newsflash, everybody makes a mistake. Just like when we're talking, we don't say things precisely, and nobody cares. So, we have this mental barrier that I need to wait till I'm perfect. Nobody's perfect. We'll make a mistake. Nobody cares. You just repeat, you might repeat yourself. And the thing that really matters, you got to really care about the call signs. I got to write that, but everything else is just like conversation. I don't have to write down everything that people are saying.
I had one of my CW ops advisors tell me something really interesting. Someone in the class said something like, "Oh, I just make mistakes when I send. Like, it's really discouraging." And he says, "How long have you been writing with a pencil?" And he's like, "Since I was like 5." He's like, "Is there an eraser on your pencil?" And he's like, "Yes." He's like, "People make mistakes when writing with pencils, and you've been doing it your entire life, so don't worry about the mistakes that you make when sending code." And I was like, "Yep." Another interesting thing, so when someone makes a mistake, people will send a lot of dits. What a lot of people are starting to get away from doing that, and they just will stop sending abruptly and then start sending again with what they meant to say. And they'll do the abrupt stop instead of all the dits. So, any more questions? All right, well, thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff.